All right, it's time again for my favorite podcast, hopefully soon to be yours, the SMC Journal. It's a show all about performance engineering and testing and IT today, hardware, software, observability, tuning, testing, what have you. I'm Scott Moore, and I'm glad that you've joined me for this program. I went online and asked some of my viewers, what would you like to see on this show over the next few weeks? The first topic that came up was observability. Now, some of you know that I've just completed a 3-part series on the Gartner Observability and APM platform, the platform Magic Quadrant that they call it. And I've discussed several of the companies on there. However, my viewers want more observability, so that's what you get. So today we're going to be talking about a takeaway article that I read from a place called Digital Enterprise Journal. It's something that the CEO of Catchpoint, Mehdi Dowdy, just turned me on to, and thank you so much, Mehdi. Bojan or Bohan, I'm trying to pronounce your name right, Simic, Bojan, you'll see in the article, has a blog for the 10 key takeaways from the Digital Enterprise Journal's 2022 Observability Market Study. So that's what we're going to go over today. Not the actual study, but the takeaways from the study. And I'm going to point you to those links and those URLs and that. There's some really good meat in here that we can take from this, and very, very well done article. So I wanted to highlight that today. You'll notice that in the studio here, there's subtle changes that are going on. We've got a little bit of the blue happening. We've got a new character over here, which you might recognize as a trademark character from some corporate company. And I won't say exactly. That is actually a piñata, by the way. I'm not going to give away too much details, but you might be seeing that in an upcoming skit for the performance tour, maybe. So like to keep little souvenirs from the things that we do. So thanks everybody for the feedback. This is what we're going to be talking about today, is the 2022 Observability Market Study and what we can gain from it today. Before we do, let's talk about the sponsors that make the show happen. This episode is sponsored by Micro Focus and the LoadRunner Solutions family. That includes LoadRunner Professional, Enterprise, Cloud, and Developer. You know, performance matters. Did you know that LoadRunner Solutions have the largest community of practitioners in the world? Join that community at community.microfocus.com, scan the QR code, and check out the LoadRunner family page on performance engineering, as well as their YouTube playlist that we've got links for in the show notes on smcjournal.com, as well as YouTube. This episode is sponsored by StormForge. The StormForge platform focuses on AI-powered software designed to help DevOps teams release with confidence and help your IT leaders realize the promise of cloud native. That means faster innovation, higher quality, resiliency, scalability, and efficiency. Find out more at stormforge.io. This episode is sponsored by Haymaker Coffee Company. Did you know that we have our own blend of coffee? That's right, it's the Scott Moore 503 blend. The Performance Tour Edition is a 6-ounce bag of espresso roast that's made specifically for me. Go to haymakercoffeeco.com and use our code PERF10 to get 10% off your purchase. Every purchase that you make supports the SMC Journal, as well as the other things that I do for the performance community. So go and check them out and get some today. I'm sure you'll love this coffee as much as I do. Thank you, sponsors. Always great to see that sponsorship is alive and well for performance engineering today. So on to this 2022 Observability Market Study. Now, this was released back in May, but that's just a couple of months ago. It's probably 8 weeks ago from this actual recording of this podcast here in July 2022. And it was basically a response to the study that was released by the Digital Enterprise Journal called Strategies of Leading Organizations and Adopting Observability. And the real aim here, observability has really become now a buzzword, just like when we heard about Agile and then DevOps and then site reliability engineering and anything that comes out from the Google, Facebook, top tier cloud native foundation. We hear about things and there's usually something really to it. But then what happens is certain, I guess, individuals get a hold of this or organizations get a hold of this, and then there becomes this more of a hype and a buzzword about it that then stirs this frenzy where it's the shiny new jangly thing and all the cool kids want it. But then what happens is it gets transformed into something that it maybe originally wasn't. It's taken in sometimes in wrong directions. And then, of course, cynics like me and other friends that I have kind of poke at the bear and poke fun of it a little bit. When we really, we're just having fun, but we know that there really is true value in it, or some of these leading companies that are doing it wouldn't be doing it. So I think observability is one of those things right now in the market that has started off with a very good foundational use of value. It has great impact to the organization. It's just now starting to be realized by a lot of the top performing organizations. But it has also become a buzzword. And then what typically happens, like I said, there's this distortion that happens around it. So, observability is just a new name for monitoring. And then vendors, in response to this buzzword, well, we need to change our name from application performance monitoring to observability platform. Yeah, because that will get more eyes on what we're doing. And you have this marketing versus technical versus reality thing that happens. And this survey tries to break through a lot of that, because observability is not just a buzzword. It actually is something that is it does have value. It does have major impact. And so there was a survey done on this study of over 1,300 companies. They identified who some of the top performing organizations are. You'll see a 3 letters here, TPO. Every time you see TPO in this article, that's what it means, is the top performing organizations. How well are they doing implementing observability? How long does it take them? And what kind of value are they getting out of it? And I found that this was very insightful, and it's probably one of the better market studies that I've done on this. So let's just kind of dive in here and look at, there's 10 takeaways. I'm not going to read this verbatim because I'm going to be sharing the link with you on the show notes. The show notes are in every YouTube video. If you look at the details, if you're watching this on YouTube, if you go to smcjournal.com and you find this episode, this is episode number 61, I believe, and you'll see the graphic for it. It says 2022 Observability Market Study. Just find that link in smcjournal.com and you can read along with me or read it for yourself. Let's actually dive in and take a look, shall we? So as you can see, this was released in May, and it says 1,300 organizations determine what observability really means. What are the key goal? That was the key goal, to identify true value areas. It's not just, I got to go beyond what vendors are calling observability. Allow organizations to benchmark and identify a class of organizations that we would call top performing organizations, TPOs, and then analyze those capabilities that have the most impact and data-backed recommendations for achieving performance levels of leading organizations. Now, there's some really cool numbers in this study that we're gonna see in this, but I just want to show you some of the stuff that has come out of here. First is, there is no true observability without the business context. Now, I think if there is a good argument for observability and morphing from APM, it is this, because with APM, it was an emphasis on we have to monitor everything. And if we monitor everything, we'll figure out what to do and we'll fix it, right? That turned into a whole lot of data that not everybody understood. There was no context or connection to, how is this thing that we're seeing on our screen, these graphs, how does that relate to the business having a problem? Because we may see reds and greens and yellows and, the red light theory. And when we see bright reds, that there's a warning, there's something going on. The users may be somewhat impacted, but might actually not be impacted as much as we think. And then there are certain things that are slipping through the cracks that would never showed up as red on any of these graphs from our APM monitoring. And then we end up fighting fires after the fact in some war room situation. And I think that's really the big argument that some of the top performing organizations, that's why we switch to think about in terms of observability as a solution versus just APM. So it does say that the top organizations are likely to be adopting observability to understand the business context around performance. So if you look at this graphic here, you'll see key value areas that observability brings to it is helping organizations understand the context, ensuring optimal user experience, managing change and complexity, and then enabling innovation and creating actionable insights. And I'm all for innovation, but this biggest one up here at the top, creating actionable insights, right? It's one thing to see a bunch of data and not know what to do with it. And it's very easy to get overwhelmed with, well, we got to monitor everything. And then with observability, that's even multiplied because there's no sampling in true observability platforms. You've got every log, every trace, a flare gun going out for every microservice that touches every container that's there for 2 minutes and gone. There's so much data coming in now that it can be completely overwhelming if you don't have a good platform to help you filter down what you really need to see. And just like Mehdi at Catchpoint says, who had actually turned me on to this, said, if you've got all the monitors in the world, it doesn't matter if you're monitoring the wrong thing. So it's all about creating actionable insights from the data at scale. So yeah, it's great to be able to say, we've logged every session for every user, whoever comes in, and if there's ever been a problem, we know about that error. We can drill right down into the very fine-grained details, and we can tell you which method call is the problem. If you can get there fast and easy, and that's being monitored the right way, observability is king, man, because think of how fast you can remediate a problem being able to get there with 2 or 3 clicks, and maybe even less. But that's the real need for all of the organizations. But then you also see that the ensuring optimal user experience is less of a priority for all the other organizations. But the top performing organizations, it's 67%. That's a key value area for them. So to me, that would tell me if I'm thinking like a top performing organization, the user experience is important. If you've got functionality that you're building and the functionality ends up out of the gate slow, in my opinion, it's not finished. It's broken functionality. It may be defect-ridden functionality for all we know. And if it doesn't scale for one or it doesn't scale for many, it's not ready. So it's not really functional in my opinion. But of course, I'm a little, I'm a little jaded about that at this point because that's what I focus on, right? But I just thought that's very good insights there. Number 2, observability data management is the key enabler for these TPOs. So the number 1 challenge for observability for 69% of organizations, that's 7 out of 10, is a lack of capabilities for data management and analysis at scale. And so this drives a number of pain points, the inability to optimize their cost and lack of actionable context. Now, what does that really mean? It kind of means that because we don't know what to do with the data, what we will end up doing is over provisioning, and then we'll begin to overpay. And this comes out really often when you're trying to be cloud native or you're trying to migrate everything to the cloud, and you find out you're being charged for every little thing, and all that poor performing code and all those poor performing database calls and CPU cycles that don't need to happen really add up fast. And now you're monitoring that, but if you don't have the right monitoring capabilities, you will overprovision, especially now for Kubernetes deployed applications. We're sponsored this episode by StormForge, and that's what they really do is they're seeing that people who are going Kubernetes only they just deal with scale by saying, you know what, we don't know how much to scale, so we're just going to overscale and we'll just overpay. But that's a lower price, in our opinion, than having outages and having notices on Twitter saying, hey, this application sucks because they can't get to it and they're down. So that's where they pay the price. And of course, Amazon's happy to take the money for that, for AWS, Azure, Microsoft. So they're making big bucks off of that. And this is where StormForge and companies like that, Akamai would be another one where they're helping you become more efficient by not having to overprovision to get the most out of those resources and optimize that. So it's a performance play, but it's more about saving that money because you've got to have those insights. If you're in the cloud, you have to have that data to be able to drive scale correctly without overpaying. So I think that's actually a really important point. Number 3, it's all about delivering a differentiating user experience. So number one goal for adopting observability for 68%, again, almost 7 out of 10, and also almost 7 out of 10 business and technology executives are looking to adopt observability to enable using technology as a source of a competitive example. Organizations should measure their success not by using DORA, SRE, or IT operational metrics, but by customer engagement and satisfaction. Somebody finally said it. I feel like the heavens have opened up and I hear, it's all about that end user experience. So I always say that, right? If all the things you're monitoring are showing that a service call is fast, a database action is fast, network activity is fast, but at the end of the day, the end user is experiencing something less than optimal for that, that's going to give somebody else a competitive advantage over you, right? Even if you have this great functionality, slow is the new down, right? So that's about giving a better end user. When they say differentiating a user experience, it's saying, hey, if I go here, it's pretty cool because I can just get stuff done. Click, click, click. Here I got to sit around and wait. It's the UX is wrong, UI is wrong. I mean, everything is wrong. The top organizations are focusing on that, and they're not just looking at, well, what does our SRE say that we have to do in the golden golden compass or golden book, golden signals, the IT operational metrics manual. What does it say we have to have? What does the DORA metrics say? Actually saying, what do our end users expect? And let's meet those expectations, or better yet, exceed those expectations, especially around performance. Another key takeaway here is that the business impact of observability is enormous. Look at these numbers here. $35 million a year lost for application release time delays, and another $5 million lost annually due to a lack of balance between cost and performance. Again, over provisioning when they should. This is the average cost across all these 1,300 organizations that were sampled. Number 5, weathering the perfect storm. Study reveals a number of major changes in business technologies that are happening simultaneously and changes how businesses think about the role of technologies and how to manage it. So you have all of this stuff happening, and this is based on the last 3 years, and you'll see there experience and personalization, an increase in customer expectations. In other words, people are less patient and people want stuff to work. At the same time, we have more complexity happen. Now, again, I've said this when I talked about the observability thing before. Everybody's talking about complexity, but every time they say that things are getting more complex, we accept that that is the way it's supposed to be. In other words, the complexity is a necessity. And as we deploy microservices and we go away from monoliths, it does become more complex because there are more moving parts and more pieces. Does that mean less testing needs to be done? No, it means more testing needs to be done. And it still needs to be done within the same amount of time as the old releases, had to be tested. So that puts pressure back on the testers and the people who are responsible for the quality and performance of that application. So you've got a war for talent going on right now. I thought that was very interesting. So organizations are going to have to pay big money for people with the right skill sets. Right now, if you are an SRE and you understand how Kubernetes works, how to scale it, how to monitor it, and how to run it effectively, you're getting paid a premium right now because there's just a lack of that in our industry right now. So that's what I'd really be studying if I were you. And if you're in the performance engineering world, if you've done performance testing the traditional way, maybe you've even come through the whole waterfall, agile, DevOps movement, this is where we're going to next. You need to understand how to optimize applications that are built on Kubernetes and microservices, and that's kind of where everybody's going. So observability is a key part of figuring all of that out. Number 6, observability done right can transform the IT world forever. Wow, that is a huge statement right there. So it basically says, based on that perfect storm, organizations will struggle, but if you take advantage of observability and you get it right, like these TPOs basically have these 5 areas: data-driven, dynamic, holistic end-to-end, and user-centric in context with the business outcomes. Observability adopted on these principles can be a transformational business enabler and IT world changer. Okay, I think that's amazing. You're going to see some numbers that support this in just a minute. Number 7, people are the key asset to the cloud native world. So really what we're talking about is this war for talent, this need for more engineers who understand the basics. And when it comes to performance engineering, that means understanding queuing theory, the protocol level, not the GUI level of an application, things that are working under the covers, and all the pieces and parts that make up an application, not just one piece of it, not just the development piece. Organizations are reporting 61% less engineers' time on non-business critical tasks as compared to others. So if you're using observability, what it means is you can have your engineers working on things that are going to take you forward versus just firefighting all the time and trying to fix things all the time. Move on to number 8, the path to becoming a leader in adopting observability goes way beyond technologies. Now look at this next graphic. The top performing organizations are more likely to be deploying processes for democratizing benefits and enabling access to different job roles. They're more likely to measure the impact of performance issues. That is huge for the performance engineer. That means that when you have an organization that is embracing observability, there is going to be a focus on performance as much as functionality. And we see that in these organizations. I mean, think of Google themselves. There's a culture of performance around Google. Think of a top retail company about Walmart. You hardly ever, I don't even know if I've ever heard of a major outage based around performance for Walmart. Think about that. That's because they're always doing testing all the time, and performance is a huge piece of what they do. And they see that as a differentiator. So these organizations are more likely to be centralizing management of observability initiatives and likely to taking a strategic approach to adopting a cloud native approach and modernization. So we know that cloud native and moving everything to the cloud is just the way of the future. Now, whether that's a private cloud that you're in control of or it's public cloud, shared cloud, and that's different. There may be organizations that are highly regulated who they want to move to the cloud, but for whatever reasons, it's just not a safe thing for them to do still at this time. But that model of working through like a cloud native type portal, even if it's private, is still, I think, it's the way that things are going to go, and I don't think that you can hold off forever not doing it. And then 78% are more likely to be taking a customer-centric approach to managing IT. This, again, is huge. I mean, I tell stories all the time where I go into organizations. They've been doing a level of performance testing for a time, but they brought me in because we're doing testing, but we're not getting any value out of it because problems are still slipping through the cracks. Why is this? We're monitoring things all the time, but we're still fighting performance issues in production. Why is this the case? And I don't find that it's necessarily that the technical talent that they usually have pretty smart people there. However, these people have been disconnected from the business. So when they think about what the customer is actually experiencing and what they're doing, this takes a little bit of a business mindset. And I'll never forget a conversation I once had with a developer who was working with a testing team. And I said, just put on your business hat for just a second and think about, put your mind around this particular user that's using your application. How do they feel about this? What would they typically be doing and why? And their eyes just crossed and they said, it's just very hard for me to do that. I just want to write this code. That's what gets a lot of organizations in trouble. I'll put it that way. That's the nicest way that I can say it. And that is why leading organizations, almost 80% of them, focus on the customer and what they're experiencing, and they're customer centric. And the closer you can get your IT staff, your developers and your testers to the mindset of an end user and treat the application like they're the end user, put themselves in the shoes of the end user, that is a recipe for success, in my opinion. So that was a big deal in this. almost done here. Let's go to number 9, identifying the right mix of technology capabilities. This market study identified capabilities that have the strongest impact on performance, and some of them are shown in this chart below. They found that these organizations are deploying emerging capabilities such as to route observability data where it has the most value. So they're creating observability pipelines. So red flag here, you're going to start hearing more about observability pipelines the way that you have heard about testing pipelines as well. So these top organizations are more likely to be deploying capabilities for real-time analysis of streaming data, more likely to capture every change in every topology and correlate it with business performance. All right, these are not necessarily easy things to do, but if you want to think like a TPO, you have to do what the TPO does. So that's why I feel like this is so valuable, this information. And it says that 77% of these of TPOs are likely to have the ability to understand the interdependencies between application performance and business services. This, again, has been a huge blind spot for folks who have implemented APM in the past. The business context, the mapping of the technical information, user login, submit, code, insert database, read, come back, crossing off the network. Each one of those components might be monitored, sometimes separately, sometimes all put together in a package. And about the time you figure all that out and you put it together, it makes this wonderful graph, but then there's no action to it. And it doesn't necessarily relate to, oh, that's because user is doing this in the business, and this is what has changed that has caused this problem to emerge. Right? Number 10 here, finding the balance between speed and reliability is a golden ticket. Now look at this number. Organizations are losing 35 million, and we already talked about that, because of delays in application releases. At the same time, they're losing 16.7 million annually due to issues with user experiences. So on average, you're leaving $16 million on the table just because you're having issues with the user experience. So it's got to be a focus. 65% of organizations say they are adopting observability to find the right balance between the speed of releases and digital services. Because we found that yes, we can get code out faster if we shift left and we push it through pipelines and we automate this and we reduce toil, and that's all good. But if it's still crappy code on the other end and the user experience still sucks, you have not won the game, my friend. 2 key reasons that these organizations are effective is they are likely to include, this is another key word here, continuous learning from performance. We hear about continuous testing, continuous performance, but what about continuous learning from what we find out, right? If you have incidents, performance incidents, or support calls or things like that, are you learning and incorporating a new strategy or changes that you need to make so that you don't have that problem again? 87% of these organizations are likely to make automation a core part of IT, which probably means they're adopting the site reliability engineer model. And as a result, 91%, almost all of them, are more likely to prevent performance issues before the users are impacted. Let me read that to you again. 91% of the top performance organizations who are successfully adopting observability are more likely to prevent performance issues before users are impacted. Cost savings, reputational savings. This is what we've been wanting. These performance engineers like myself who have been trying to educate and let the world know it's possible to get here. Some of these organizations are actually seeing this today. So for me, this report is extremely exciting, and I think that if you're a performance engineer, you will find that as well. So we're going to share the link not only to this blog article, but also we're also going to show you the research study link itself. This is the page for the research study on DEJ. And it shows you right here, 1,300 organizations tells you what it's for, and it tells you some of these highlights here. I would love to have the author of this, Bohan. I would love to have you on the show if you want to talk more about this. Opening the door to you right now if you want to talk. I think that would be great. But this is great. It's probably one of the best reports that I've read. So thanks, Mehdi, for turning me on this. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I want to talk about one other thing here on the show today. We have an event coming up for the Performance Tour. So this podcast is actually airing towards the end of July. I believe it's going to air sometime on the 28th of July. This should be airing. So in less than a month, on August the 16th, 2022, in Nashville, Tennessee, there is going to be a meetup of the Performance Tour in Nashville, Tennessee. Let me bring up that screen for you and show you that. And you'll see it's going to be a similar meeting, not exactly the same, of what we did in April in Texas, where I'm joined by my good friend and colleague, James Pulley. He is the Chief Performance Officer for QA Consultants, who's a big sponsor of the Performance Tour. It's going to be held at a company called Vaco in Nashville in the Brentwood area. Those of you in Nashville, I spent 20 years in that town, worked with a lot of the companies there. Many people have already went to this page and registered. We will have a link to the registration in our show notes, but go to theperformancetour.com and you check out events. This will be like the first one that you're going to see right now until it's over. If you're watching this podcast way after, it may be off the page. But it's August the 16th, 6 p.m. till about 8-ish or whatever. We're going to have barbecue brought in, of course, the food of choice. It's going to be in Brentwood, Tennessee. There's a link to the actual place. And we're going to be talking about all these things like observability, digital experience monitoring, AI ops, and how all of that works. We're going to be joined on this particular meeting by another good friend who appeared on the Performance Tour back in February, and that's Rebecca Kleinert from Splunk. And she is working with their observability platform. And she's actually going to address some issues. She's got some really cool insights that she wants to share at this meetup that she hasn't shared in the past. So if you're interested in observability, number one, you're going to want to be at this. And if you want to ask us anything, we're going to be opening the floor to you. We're going to have some other really cool special guests there that are going to be present that I already know are registered. So we're over halfway full, and we've still got about 3 more weeks to go. It would be great if you could join us. If you're anywhere near the Nashville area or you're wanting to fly in, it would be great to have you. Just make sure that you go to this page and register, because I'm the guy paying for the food, and I need to know how many people are going to show up and make sure that we've got enough room in the building. We will be filming this as well, and we'll be showing off some of our latest skits and things that you will get to see at this meeting before anybody else. So I think it's going to be a pretty special event. Looking forward to seeing everybody there. Well, I would like to know what you think about this report that we talked about today. And did you think it was as spectacular as I did? Love to hear your feedback on that. There's a few ways that you can reach me. One is through my website, scottmoore.consulting. I'm very active on LinkedIn, so there's a URL for my profile there. I'm also available on Twitter at LoadTester is my handle. And the usual way through email would be help@scottmoore.consulting. Just shoot me an email, tell me what you think, comment on any of the on your YouTube channel, whatever you want. And if you are watching this on YouTube and you like this show, would be great if you would be willing to actually subscribe to the channel and help me understand if I'm making content that you really want to see more often. So if you like and subscribe and hit the little bell and all the little things that you have to do, that's where I put all the episodes of the SMC Journal, which comes out every Tuesday and Thursday at 8 a.m. U.S. East Coast time, EST. And then the Performance Tour comes out once a month. So all of that is pushed out to the Scott Moore Consulting channel. And it's always great to get your feedback, because that helps me tweak and tune and steer my direction, because I have to tune my performance of what I'm doing for the show, just like you have to tune the performance of your application. So it'd be really great to hear from you. So again, help@scottmoore.consulting. See everybody out there on the road or online. Thanks again for watching the show. Until next time, Scott Moore saying bye-bye.